Alright, welcome everyone. I want to give you a minute, first of all, to start tonight by imagining what your life will be like in 10 years. Genuinely, like take 30 seconds and imagine what you think your life will be like. Now, I wonder how many of you said something like what college you'll attend, or maybe thought about the job you might have or might want to have, or maybe the vocation you hope to be living out. Maybe being a wife, a priest, or husband, or a religious sister. When I pictured my life 10 years ago, I don't think I would have had any of this in mind for myself. Literally 10 years ago for me, I was in your shoes. I was going through confirmation, and faith wasn't part of my life. I didn't go to Mass on Sundays with my family. My family just didn't really go. And I thought that this was just something I was supposed to do, just get confirmed and move on with my life. But now, here I am 10 years later, and I'm still at confirmation classes. And I actually have this as, the biggest part of my life is my faith. And the second biggest part of my life is that I'm a wife. And that's crazy and probably not something I would have imagined when I was in your shoes. Because when you're in 8th grade or, 7th, 9th, whatever, you don't typically think oh yeah, I'm gonna get married as soon as possible. So, just bizarre, honestly. This is not what I would have imagined for my life, but I'm so grateful that I'm here. And honestly, I think I probably would have imagined that I was just working a job somewhere, hanging out with my friends all the time. Maybe I made family more of a priority than I had before. I can't even imagine what I imagined 10 years ago, because I'm not even sure I was thinking that far ahead. I had no idea what kind of job I wanted to do. I had no idea when I wanted to do anything in my life. I'm not exactly much of a planner. But tonight, we're talking about this kind of thing. We're talking about vocations. And that, sounds like a weird word. What does vocation even actually mean? Well, in the Catholic world, we talk a lot about vocations. We use that word when we talk about the vocation of a priest, or a religious, or even a married person. And it doesn't end there. Vocation also means God's call for how He wants us to live out His will. That's really the most simple definition I can give you. Vocation means God's call for how He wants you to live out His will. Maybe it was easy for you to envision what your life will be like 10 years from now. But sometimes it's harder to figure out who we're meant to be in this moment. Many of us are not even asking the most important question in our life. Who does God want me to be right now? We each have this same universal vocation, the same call to holiness. The call to holiness is that God calls man to seek Him, to know Him, and to love Him with all His strength. That's our universal vocation. All of us are on the same page about that. It's my call, it's your call, And it's a call of the person sitting next to you. It's a call of your parents, of your friends, of your teachers, of your family members. We are all called to seek, know, and love the Lord, whether we know it or not. This is from 1 Peter 1:15. It says, "But as he who called you is holy, be holy yourselves in all your conduct." You're not meant to answer this call in 10 years. It's time for you to respond right now. But how do you live a holy life in this moment? As a teen, as a middle schooler or a high schooler? Well, number one, an easy way to gauge if you're living out holiness in your daily life is to look at how you treat people. Do you take away people's dignity by talking badly about them? Have you taken time to get to know the lonely person at school? Do you go out of your way to help those in need? Are you frustrated by the fact that we have to do service hours? Or even do you get frustrated when you're in traffic? For me personally, I feel like the easiest way I can tell if I'm not in a state of grace, if I'm not in a state of striving to be as holy as I possibly can, is I get way more frustrated at little things around me. Usually I'm just able to let things go and not much really bugs me. But if I'm going through a time where I'm not striving as much as I should be, I can tell by the way that I react to traffic, by how much it frustrates me. If I have to sit there, or if someone does something stupid in the car in front of me. It's as simple as that. You can gauge if you're on the path of holiness simply by how you treat people, how you react to the world around you. Another important part of living out holiness is, you might not like to hear this, but it's being the best student that you can be. And that means, completing your homework, behaving in class, taking your education seriously. Your call right now, what God wants you to do right now, is be a student. And that was something that was really hard for me to hear when I was in college, because college is a fun time. You meet a lot of great people. But from the second I got there, I was ready to move on. I wanted to be in the real world. I wanted to graduate. So when people told me that my vocation right now was to be a student, I thought that was so frustrating. But it is. You're called to show your holiness through how you are a student. And that's not to say, I don't want you to interpret it as meaning that you have to get straight A's. You have to do everything, get 100%. That's not what it means. It means that you just have to do your best. It means that you have to put in effort, that you have to try to learn as much as you can and try to better yourself as much as you can. And education is a great way to do that. Better yourself. Learn more about the world around you. And so this is your lowercase v. It's not your, marriage, priesthood, something, vocation. That's your capital V vocation. But this is your current temporary vocation with lowercase v. To be a student and to be a good student. To be a holy student right now in your life. As Catholics, we've been given the great gift of the sacraments to help us live out our universal call to holiness. By going to Mass every Sunday and receiving the Lord in the Eucharist, we get to become more like Him. That's such a gift. And by taking in the sacrament of reconciliation, confession, we're able to more fully live out our call. We're able to be free from those sins from all these things that are holding us back. We literally just get to let them go, wipe our slate clean, be free and move on, and try to be better. That's what we say at the end of confession. I resolve to sin no more. I promise you, Lord, I'm going to try my best to never have to do this again. I'm going to try my best not to hurt you or the people around me ever again. That's such a gift that we're given that not many other religions have, to just completely wipe our slate clean and start over and try to be our best. We're all called to live out the universal vocation that I've talked about, but we're also called to live out our particular vocation. This is the vocation that was meant specifically for you. I mean, look around at the people sitting next to you, at the people who are in your life. You all are very different. And that's such a cool, beautiful thing. You all have different gifts. That's what makes us different. The Lord made each of you unique. And He has a specific way for you to live out your particular vocation here on earth. There are many times in our life when we think that God is trying to trick us, just like Simon did in the gather. There are times when we can't figure out what He's calling us to do. The reality is that God is calling us to do something specific. Sometimes we don't listen to Him. Again, sometimes we think He's trying to trick us. He's trying to figure out what we want so that He can take that away and give us something different. And that is totally not how God operates. The beautiful thing is that He knows us. He knows our heart. He knows our life, our story. And He knows absolutely what's best for us. He knows the best possible life and path that we can take. And so, He designs for us the vocation and the path that will get us to heaven as easy as possible. He designs the easiest possible path to heaven for us because He knows us. He knows what's going to get us there and what's going to bring us joy while we're getting there. I've heard this before, and I absolutely love this quote, that you won't be miserable in your vocation. And I think it's important to recognize, because God's not going to call you to something that you don't want. He's not going to call you to something that is going to be miserable for you. It's going to be bad for you. And it's not going to bring you joy or bring you to heaven. I think some people get kind of scared to get called to the priesthood or to religious life as a sister or a brother or something. Because they're like, well, that's so scary. What'll happen? What if I don't like that? What if that's, something that's really hard for me? I have to give up everything else in my life for this thing. The reality is, if that's something that would make you miserable, then He's not going to call you to it. That's okay. The Lord calls us outside of our comfort zone. He calls us to grow, but He doesn't call us to be miserable. And on the other side of that, if you think that getting married and, raising a family, all that kind of stuff, if you think that sounds terrifying and just so uninviting, that's okay. You're allowed to think that. Maybe you're not called to that. In our culture, it's kind of a thing where we just assume that everybody's going to get married. Or, we assume that, if somebody's single by the time they're 30 or something, they're just waiting to meet someone. They're just waiting to get married. The reality is, being single is a vocation. Being single is an option. You're not just waiting for something to come along, waiting for someone else to come along. Maybe you're called to a life of singleness, and that's okay. There are so many beautiful priests, sisters, and just lay people who devote their lives to staying single. And they're able to do so many beautiful things because of that. We have, like so many of our scientific advancements, like genetics and stuff like that, came from brothers. It came from monks who were able to do this research, and friars. And so many wonderful companies, so many wonderful acts of service are able to be done and run by people who are single. Because, we're all familiar with what a family life is like. All of us come from families, and they're beautiful, but they're very demanding. And there are some things in life that just may not be possible. You can't give yourself fully to your family and fully to a company. If, let's say you're supposed to be some kind of CEO and run this amazing company that does great things for the world, that sounds like it's going to be hard to do and have a happy family life. Not to say it's impossible, absolutely not. But there's a reason that we have different vocations. We have different options. And I hate that our culture just assumes that everyone's going to get married and that that's how it should be. Because honestly, personally, I think that way less people should get married than actually do. I think that's why our divorce rates are so high. I think that's why those CEOs of big companies or celebrities have a hard time keeping their marriage together, go through a lot of divorce. Because they're trying to give their life to multiple things. And you can't be in a marriage, you can't be in a family and not give your life to them. And so that's why we have different options. That's why we have all these different things, all these different paths that you're able to take to get to heaven, and why God calls us to a specific one. Because He knows what's best for us. He knows the right path, the easiest way for us to get to heaven. And that's what He's going to call us to. One of the gifts of the sacrament of confirmation is that you'll be more firmly united to Christ. And that gift allows you to hear His call more clearly. But only if you truly listen to what He's telling you to do. You have to be open to wherever He wants to lead you. To be open to the possibilities and open to listening to Him. Because maybe He's not calling you to be a sister, let's say. But if you're closing your heart off to Him because you're scared that He might, then you're also closing your heart off and your ears off to be hearing what He is trying to tell you. Because of this thing that you're scared He might try to tell you. So open your heart and listen to Him. And again, just truly trust that He wants the best for you. That He's not going to call you to something that isn't the best for you. We've all probably experienced married couples who are living out the sacrament of marriage. And, our priests, our parish priests, are living out the sacrament of holy orders. But these are only two of the many vocations within the Catholic Church. The sacrament of holy orders includes our diocesan bishop, parish priests, and deacons. But it also includes religious priests who are living out a different charism in their ministry, such as the Franciscans or the Dominicans. or the Benedictines. The sacrament of marriage includes couples who are married in the church, in the Catholic Church. And consecrated life includes people who have chosen to stay single for the Lord. Some examples of consecrated life are religious sisters and secular institutes. And you might be wondering, okay, great, what does this all mean for me? Well, it's important to keep in mind that, again, God calls you to the vocation that will be your surest path to holiness. Sometimes we feel like God is going to force us into a vocation that we don't want. But the most important step you can take right now to help set yourself up for success, so you don't spend your whole life wandering around trying to figure out what this is begin discerning your vocation right now. And that sounds like big, fancy, intimidating words. The process of discernment may seem intimidating. There are simple steps that you can take to begin this process. And the first is simply to ask the Lord to open your heart so that you'll be ready to say yes when He starts you on the path toward your vocation. In my own life, I know that there was this time where I was a freshman in college, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do for the summer. Because there's a lot of different options. Some people go to internships, and they go somewhere far away. And I knew that I wanted to serve the Lord in some way this summer, so I thought maybe, I'll work for a camp, like across the country or something. Because coming home, when you're gone away to college, coming home can be really difficult. It's hard to go from having no rules and no structure really to all of a sudden, okay, now I have to follow mom and dad's rules again. Now all of a sudden I have my own curfew, and they always want to know where I am, what I'm doing. And so I basically decided that I was going to go anywhere but home was my choice. And it wasn't until I was at a conference over winter break that finally I opened it up to the Lord and I asked Him what He wanted me to do for the summer. And immediately He told me to go home. And I was kind of frustrated by that because I was like, well, I told you that's the last thing I wanted to do. But He just told me go home. And so I did. I went home and I came here. I had a job, but I was volunteering here at Prince of Peace. And that's when I met my now husband. So if I hadn't set myself up to be open to what He wanted for me, if I hadn't set myself up to say yes to the little ways that He was leading me, the ways that He was starting me on this path to my vocation of being married to John, I could have missed that. I could have missed him. And that's like a horrifying thing that seemed like such a small decision. What I was going to do for 2 months of my life changed the entire trajectory. But I had to say yes to Him. I had to trust Him and follow Him. And that one little decision to begin on this path. It was that one yes that started me on the path to marry my husband. And even before that, way back when I was in 8th grade, going through confirmation, we were told, and I don't know why this really stuck with me, because again, I wasn't very religious, and I didn't really understand this whole thing. But we were told to start praying for our vocation. They said, if you think you're called to marriage, start praying for your future spouse. Even if you end up not being called to marriage, you're still praying for that vocation. Just pray for wherever God is leading you. And if it's to another person, pray for them. Pray that they're being led towards you as well, and they're being led on a path to holiness. And that was something that really stuck out to me. And so I did. I started praying for my future husband. Still probably not as much as I could have. And I know the parts in his life now where he could have used my prayers, and I wasn't praying for him. I was falling short. I was forgetting about him. But the really beautiful, crazy thing is the same thing happened to him. He considered himself an atheist when he was going through confirmation. He was only doing it to make his mom happy. But throughout high school, he started getting more involved here at Prince of Peace. And he found that, okay, this is actually true, and this is important, and this is what I'm going to base my life around. And at that same time, and going through confirmation, he started praying for me, for his future wife, too. And so it's been this beautiful journey of being able to see where we've been praying for each other, how we've been led to each other. And that is the reason that we're here. It's the reason that we were able to get married at 22 and 23. That is obviously very young, but we wouldn't have been prepared for that if we hadn't been preparing for the past 10 years. Praying for it, praying for each other, and saying yes to him along the way to make sure that we're being led on the right path to each other, and therefore to holiness in heaven. So that's my long-winded personal way of saying, start praying about it today. Ask the Lord to open your heart, to be ready to say yes. He starts you on the path towards your vocation. That's the first thing you can do. And second, learn about and experience as many different vocations as you can. The more you learn about them, the better you'll hear the Lord when He begins directing you toward your vocation. You can start by researching the different types of religious orders and charisms. For example, some religious are active in education. Some of them are teachers. Some of them serve the poor, or take care of the sick, like, Saint Mother Teresa. And even some of them still do, hospital work and take care of sick people. Other religious are cloistered, and they commit their entire lives to prayer for the church and for the world, which is just such a cool thing, such a cool opportunity, such a gift that we're all given without even really knowing it. I cannot imagine what our world would be like if we didn't have sisters and brothers praying for us 24/7. I don't even want to imagine that, because we don't have to. We have those people who are always praying for us. And that's such a beautiful thing. Once you find some vocations that you feel fit your gifts and your personality, start getting to know people who are already living them out. Spend time with a married couple living out the Lord's will in their family. Spend time with a holy married couple. Get to know your parish priest and see what his day-to-day life is like. I talk to Father Ken probably once a week for an hour or two. We just sit and talk about video games and board games and what's going on in our lives. Like, our priests are really cool people. They're people you should get to know. They're fun. I have Father Ken over for game nights all the time. And Father Craig is such a sassafras. He's like a sass master. He's such a just funny guy and someone that you love spending time with. If you know Father Francis, oh, he is the funniest, loveliest man. And goodness, does he love sweets. Like, so much. That's his whole thing. They're real people. And they're fun to be around. They're a genuine joy. So get to know them. Visit different religious orders. There's literally things that are called, like I know people in college and even in high school, groups of girls will go on nun runs. And they'll just go and meet a bunch of sisters and get to experience like a day in the life in their order. And that's so cool, and I've heard so many cool stories from that. Even girls I know who are married now, who weren't called to that vocation, they just went and experienced it. And they got to know what it looks like better, and they have so much more appreciation for that now. And no matter what you do, the more information you have, the more educated you are on all of this, your heart will be led easier. You'll know more. You'll know what feels right more. You'll know what gives you a sense of peace in thinking about all these different things. The idea of joining a religious order may seem overwhelming, and maybe the people around you make a big deal out of it. It freaks you out. But visiting a convent or a monastery, it doesn't mean that you are going to become a sister or priest or brother or monk or whatever. It simply means that you're opening yourself up to whatever path the Lord is calling you to. And that's the best possible thing you can do for yourself, is be open to what the Lord wants, because He wants the best. One day, you will enter into your vocation. It'll be this outward yes. For married couples, it's at the altar, and they say their vows. And, when priests are getting ordained, it's again that moment at the altar where they say yes. They surrender their life. It's going to be this outward yes to the Lord and following His will for your life. But for now, where you're at now in your life, these smaller steps that you're taking are just that. They're small steps to help you learn how to live out your call to holiness, to help you live out and find your path to heaven. Amen.